Hit that like button if you're fired up for the Las Vegas Raiders to take down the Minnesota Vikings on Saturday. I don't know the last time I was this fired up for a preseason game. So if you don't hit that like button, I'm going to come find you, name and address. Raider Nation, what's going on? It's Mitchell Renz, your host of the Raiders Report, with a new segment that we're going to be launching here on the show. Every week, I'm going to sit down with a host of a team that the Raiders are going up against, and we're going to call this segment an Inside Look. It's going to be an inside look on the Raiders and Vikings preseason matchup from the eyes from our Vikings host, Patrick Siepman. We're going to go through the 5 biggest storylines for the opposing team. That way, you guys know what to look for just a little bit more, and you can kind of feel some of that rivalry, feel some of that big-time passion, which maybe you don't necessarily know entering a preseason game. We're also going to look at the biggest strengths and weaknesses and how the Raiders can take down the Vikings. Now, I know this. Obviously, in a preseason game, this show might be a little bit different. It might look a little bit different during the regular season, but I know this. I'm a competitive person. I love to win, but I hate losing more than I like winning. And we're doing a preseason Week 1 challenge, and guess what? I need my inside look video to do better than Vikings inside look video. So whoever's video gets more likes is going to win the first step to this challenge, because I can't just expect Antonio Pierce to march into Saturday and only win their battle. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not going to be able to make an impact on the field, but I can make an impact leading up to this game, and I'm trying to create some hype around this one because there is a lot of hype around this preseason game for both sides of the football. So help me take care of business. Hit that like button. We got to get more likes than our Vikings show. If you don't know who our Vikings host is, his name is Patrick Siepman. You can follow him on social media at Pat Sieps if you want to ask him more questions about this game from some of the things that you saw in today's episode. But our Vikings channel has 26.8 thousand subscribers. Here at the Raiders Report, we got a little over 170,000. So it's maybe a little bit of a David versus Goliath thing. But you know what? I'm okay with Goliath smashing David in this standpoint. So for this football game, it's going to be going down on August 10th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, and we will be live on this channel. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you got those notifications turned on. We're going to be having some giveaways. If you miss party in Oakland style, if you like party in Vegas style, I promise you this, join me and over 100,000 Raiders fans on Saturday, because nobody does a watch party like the Raiders Report. So coming up here, let's get into some of the biggest storylines for Minnesota and the Raiders. And this is going to be one of those videos that Vikings fans are going to watch this video. You're going to see a lot of people interacting here in the comments, and I want both sides to understand all the storylines for both Minnesota and for the Las Vegas Raiders. So we're going to go through here and we're going to look at all of these storylines and just say, hey, this is what you should look for in this game. And obviously, again, it's a preseason. It's not as easy to be able to figure out, which is why I was happy that we were able to invite our Vikings guy in here. So the first storyline for Minnesota is you're going to look at some of their cornerback concerns. These are also not ranked in any particular order. But besides Byron Murphy, who's going to step up in this cornerback room, unfortunately, which, you know, we've talked about because he was a guy that we talked about a lot on the show. Minnesota, unfortunately, lost their 4th-round rookie, Kyrie Jackson, this offseason to, a horrible automobile accident. And now they're looking for other players to be able to step up and go out there and do their thing. If I'm the Las Vegas Raiders and I'm looking at their cornerback depth, you got Shaq Griffin, Byron Murphy. I don't necessarily know how many of their starters are going to go out there and they're going to play, but this is a weaker group. So for Las Vegas and some of their wide receiver talent, you got to look at a lot of these young guys and say, hey, who's going to step up? Are you going to see DJ Turner or Jalen Guyton? We've heard a lot of good things about Christian Wilkerson lately. Some of the UDFAs and Tulu Griffin and Ramel Keaton. With the open battles here around the wide receiver position for the Raiders, this could be a good group to just see how we just stack up against them. But if we do struggle at a wide receiver standpoint against this Vikings DB group, that could be a little bit concerning. Let's go to a Raiders storyline here. How's the Getsy offense going to go out there and is it going to perform? The Raiders, for their first depth chart, listed 12 personnel, 2 tight ends, 2 wide receivers. Are we going to see it a lot? How much running are we going to see? Now, I don't want Getsy to just show his entire playbook from the jump, right? But I do really, really want to know how he's using Brock Bowers, how he's going to use Michael Mayer, and how he's going to use Harrison Bryant, Zach Gentry, because I do anticipate with some of this lesser depth at the wide receiver position, I want to see some of these mismatches with some of these great tight ends that we have and just see how they stack up from an overall depth standpoint. Vikings storyline number 2 is the wide receiver 3 battle, and quite frankly, it's very similar, I think, with the Las Vegas Raiders. Jalen Nailor He's the favorite right now to win this job. So I want to see which player on the Raiders gets matched up against Nailor in the slot. And I know that Nate Hobbs is a player that we have a lot of confidence in the slot. But outside of that, like, you know, they're going to have Sherfield. You got Powell, who's been a fun player, I think, for the Vikings. So if I'm the defensive coordinator, Patrick Graham, I'm looking at some of those matchups. I'm going to figure out some of my best guys that can go up against Nailor and just see how our defense stacks up. Storyline number 2 here for the Raiders is that right tackle job. And right now it is a battle between Thayer Munford and DJ Glaze. You can also talk about some of the depth there just behind Dalton Wagner. On the left side is Andres Peet, but for that right tackle spot, Munford and Glaze has been nipping at the heels of Munford. Want to see how both of those players do this coming Saturday. Viking storyline number 3 is the offensive philosophy, and I think that, you know, when you see a new regime kind of roll in a little bit, they're looking for more of a balanced attack, not just pass happy. Reminder, they had Kirk Cousins as QB, and when you're Kirk Cousins, your QB, you're probably going to chuck the rock around a little bit more. Now they have Sam Darnold. Now you got J.J. McCarthy, both QBs that need to get that running game a little bit more established. For the Raiders, also, that cornerback 3 battle. Nate Hobbs, Jack Jones, those are your top 2 guys. And this is Bennett's job to lose here at this point, which, based on injuries that we've seen, it is 100% his job to lose. But what does Brandon Faison look like? What does a player like MJ Devonshire look like? DeCamerion Richardson? Those 3 other cornerbacks are still going to be battling for that cornerback 4 job behind JB. At number 4 here, tight end 2 battle here for the Vikings. TJ Hawkinson, I do think is one of the better tight ends in the National Football League. He's out with an injury, which means Josh Oliver, who is their tight end 2 right now, is also next to Johnny Munt, Robert Tonyan, and the Vikings over the past few seasons, I think, have done a good job incorporating the tight end position. Again, you got Hawkinson, so it makes it a little bit easier. But one thing that has just driven me up a wall since covering this team is our linebackers' inability to cover the tight end position. If the Vikings are trying to figure out who that tight end 2 is, I anticipate that they're going to draw up some plays for those 3 guys. So maybe it's Luke Masterson. Maybe it's Amari Burney, Tommy Eichenberg, hell, Divine Diablo, Robert Spillane. I don't care who it is. I want to see how our linebackers match up, but I also want to see how our safeties match up. Because for this Raiders defense, they listed 2 linebackers as the starter. I do think that we incorporate a lot more of our strong safeties, a lot more of our physicality with an Isaiah Paulomeo, maybe a Trey Taylor or Chris Smith, to see how they stack up against those tight ends. Let's go to the 4th storyline here for the Raiders, and it's that wide receiver depth, man. Like, I kind of hinted at it earlier when I was talking about the Vikings and their cornerbacks, but like every wide receiver not named Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers has something to prove. I don't care what your name is. I don't care where you're ranked on that depth chart. Every single guy has something to prove, and I think how close this wide receiver battle is, you got to go out there and you got to make a difference in the preseason, because preseason matters more to me than what you do at training camp. The 5th storyline, the Vikings. Sam Darnold versus J.J. McCarthy. Though, according to Seeps, J.J. has been the better guy thus far in camp, but Sam Darnold was listed as at least the guy that's going to be getting the starting reps. Why I love this preseason game so much is because quarterback battles are what you watch for in the preseason. Minnesota's got a quarterback battle, and guess what? So do we. Aiden O'Connell versus Gardner Minshew. Both are going to play. AP kind of hinted at both of these guys getting a potential quarter. So if I'm the Raiders and if I'm the Vikings, I'm trying to go out there and I'm trying to win that first half, because I think it's really going to be Aiden O'Connell versus Sam Darnold, Gardner Minshew versus J.J. McCarthy, or flip-flop. That first half is a must-win first half for both sides, both teams here. So how about this? We're talking about quarterback rooms, and I saw my guy Raider Honcho on Twitter said, if you got 2 quarterbacks, you got no quarterbacks. Well, both of these teams have 2 quarterbacks, quite frankly. Who do you think, though, has the better QB room? If you think it's the Las Vegas Raiders, I want you to type LV. If you think it's the Minnesota Vikings, I want you to type MIN. And reminder, you're going to get a lot of Vikings fans here. I'd imagine we're going to have a lot of Raiders fans watching the show as well. So whatever your answer is, say it with your chest. My answer is this. I believe that it is the Raiders. I would type LV. And I say that because, to me, Gardner Minshew is the best quarterback in that group. So I think Gardner's better than Sam Darnold. I think Gardner's better than J.J. McCarthy. I'm also not a McCarthy believer. I would actually rank him last on that list. So because of all those reasons, I'm going to roll with the Raiders and their quarterbacks. Coming up next here, let's get into the Vikings' biggest strengths and what to watch for the Raiders. Because, again, if I'm a team rolling out in the preseason, I'm going to rely on my strengths. I'm also trying to figure out what I have in certain players. If you're the Raiders, how do you stop those strengths, and what are the players to look for based off what our Vikings host said? We'll get into all that in just a moment, but Rocket Money is our sponsor here on today's show, and I want you to optimize your finances. This app will save you hundreds of dollars. That's what Forbes says. If you don't listen to me, I know Forbes is a lot smarter than what I am. Go to rocketmoney.com/LV Raiders. That's rocketmoney.com/LV Raiders. Rocket Money has helped over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's features. If you don't know what Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so that you can grow your savings. I love my fiance, Alex, and she's the queen of signing up for a free trial and then forgetting about it, and then I get charged a little bit later. But Rocket Money helps me and her make sure we aren't just throwing money away. If you're someone saving up for a house, a car, a vacation, heck, maybe Raiders tickets, you can also check your credit score, then you should definitely go to rocketmoney.com/LV Raiders. I also love this app because I love their marketing where, I always see like a commercial for Rocket Money and they're like, how many subscriptions do you have? Because most people, if you go right now, answer it out loud to yourself. How many subscriptions do you have? If you go to rocketmoney.com/LV Raiders, I guarantee you have double the amount of subscriptions that you thought you did. And I just think it's just a good way to understand where your money's going. And for anybody that's trying to save up in the economy that we're in right now, cancel the unwanted subscriptions, save a little bit of money, rocketmoney.com/LV Raiders. All right, let's go to the Vikings strengths on offense. When I asked Seeps, he said wide receiver and tight end is right now the group. And if I'm the Raiders, I'm always going to enter a matchup and try to take away what they do well. So how do we take away the wide receivers? How do we take away their tight end group? Justin Jefferson signed a massive contract this offseason. Not sure if we see him play this game, but I'm going to be looking at Nailor, Powell, Sherfield, some of those depth pieces. From a tight end standpoint, again, Oliver's going to be the main tight end in this matchup here for Minnesota. So how does Patrick Graham's defense stack up against them, and which players should Raider fans watch? These are the top 6 players that I'm going to be looking at. I want to see Al Jacorian, DeCamerion, and MJ Devonshire, the 2 rookies and the second-year guy, match up against the receivers. And then I want to know what Isaiah Paul-Mayo's doing from a tight end standpoint. I want to see how Chris Smith, Trey Taylor stack up since they're both listed as the 4th and 5th safety on this depth chart. Next biggest strength here on the offensive side of the football for Minnesota is the offensive tackles. And if you want to win in the National Football League, you got to protect your quarterback. If you want to win in the National Football League, you got to be able to get after the quarterback. And, Minnesota, it pains me, and I hate being the guy that says I told you so often. But I told you so, Raider fans, that Christian Darrisaw was going to be a hell of a player, and we should have taken him over Alex Leatherwood. But, hey, neither here nor there. With Minnesota, their tackles, if you want to win this game and if you want to beat Minnesota in general, you got to be able to pin those ears back, get after those young and inexperienced quarterbacks, and put a lot of pressure on them. So the players that I'm watching up against some offensive tackles is I'm looking at the defensive end group. I want to see Tyree Wilson work inside and outside. I want to see Charles Snowden and Janarius Robinson, who I think right now are battling for that defensive end 4 job. David Agoa, the International Pathway Program player. He's rocking number 55 now. Is he looking a little bit better than what he did last season? And then another UDFA that I got maybe a little bit of a soft spot for, Ron Stone Jr. Definitely a guy to look for as could he potentially make this team? Probably going to be a practice squad guy, though. Then another Vikings here, running backs. And Minnesota's done a good job throughout their history of late, especially when the NFL has been very pass happy. I think they've done a good job staying consistent with some of their running back play. They got a new back now in Aaron Jones. I don't really think that we're going to see him. Also, could this be a fun revenge game for Alexander Madison now that I'm thinking it from the jump? But when you look at the running back room, how can we slow down the backs? And over the past few seasons, our defense has struggled slowing down the rushing attack, and I want to see how our defensive tackles do. How does somebody like a Byron Young, a Matthew Butler, Nesta Jade Silvera, how do they look? Quite frankly, I probably should add Marquand McCall to this list. How do our rookie linebackers look? And Tommy Eichenberg, Amari Burney, those would be the players that I would look for against that matchup there. Now let's go to the defensive side of the football and inside look. The edge rushers. This is the strength of Minnesota's defense, being able to get after the quarterback. And if you're going to have a QB like Aiden the Gardner, you got to be able to protect him. But we also need some of our offensive line players at OT to be able to protect those guys. So from an edge standpoint, they can beat you in a lot of different ways. Like, Andrew Van Ginkel is, to me, one of the most fun players in the NFL. I really wish the Raiders would have figured out a way to bring him in. But because the Vikings can get after you, and they do have a lot of speed, and they are going to be an aggressive team with Brian Flores there, like, they're going to bring a lot of blitzes, and they're going to try to get in your face. If I'm the Raiders and I see that, the players that I'm looking at are these five. How does Aiden and how does Gardner handle the pressure? Obviously, you could throw in Carter Bradley, Anthony Brown being thrown into that mix as well. But like Thayer Munford DJ Glaze in an offensive tackle battle. And then another random player that we do talk about a lot because he's an athletic freak at 6'8" from Arkansas, Dalton Wagner, was injured last season. How does he look this season in James Craig's offensive line? Let's go to the safety group now. It's another strength there for the Minnesota Vikings defense. And how do our tight ends match up against their safeties? How do we stretch the field going there from top to bottom? Because you got Cam Bynum. Harrison Smith continues to get it done at a high level. And then, again, I would compare the Vikings depth to closest to what we got, where I think a lot of Vikings fans are very fired up about their safeties. And, you know, outside looking in, you might not know a lot of these names. But we're also very confident in our safety group. The way that I believe the Raiders are really going to take advantage of some of these safety matchups is with that tight end group, because Browers, because Mayer can stretch the field. They can do a lot of different things. But what does Harrison Bryant, Zach Gentry look like? What about a Cole Fotheringham? Heck, John Samuel Schnenker could be another player to keep in mind if we want to be able to go with more fullback sets and whatnot. The tight end group against the Viking safety is definitely a matchup that I want the nation to look at. And then the final strength here on defense is the linebacker position for the Vikings, and still got some good depth. They're going to be a physical football team. This is going to be a physical preseason game from top to bottom. Blake Cashman had a hell of a season last year for Houston. Ivan Pace Jr. and another, I hate to say I told you so, but I told you so. We pleaded and begged McDaniels and Ziegler to draft Pace back in 2023 for 3 rounds from what it seems like. And go figure, the UDFA out of Cincinnati has now made himself a very good spot there. But the reason why I want to see that matchup is because I want to see how Ivan Pace stacks up against some of our players. Like, are we going to run the rock a lot with Zamir White? Is Alexander Madison going to get that opportunity? What does our wide zone scheme look like going up against the linebackers in Minnesota? Dylan Laube, how does he match up against a pass-catching standpoint and running the ball between the tackles? Then, obviously, Brock Bowers, Michael Mayer. I want to see the mismatches. I want to see the matches created just from moving those guys over the football field, because you put Bowers and Mayer on a tight or on a linebacker, they're going to win that matchup, man. Coming up next here is going to be my prediction for this game. I expect Sieps to give a prediction. I'm going to give my prediction. It's the preseason, and I'll tell you this right now, there ain't no way in hell I'm predicting the Raiders to lose this game. It's a preseason game. When you look at the over-under right now for this one, the Raiders are the 4-point favorites, and I think, again, that's them betting on the quarterback position just being better. It is one of the higher over-unders, and I do anticipate that a lot of these Raiders preseason games are higher on the over-under. For example, the Texans and Bears game, I want to say that was at, 32.5 or 30.5? It was a lower scoring over-under prediction, though that would have definitely ended up hitting, or maybe it did hit even with the weather delay. So you look at this game, you look at the over-under, I'm going to give my prediction, and I'm going to go Raiders win this one 24-13. The number that Antonio Pierce continues to throw out there is he wants his offense to get to 24. So I think that that's the sweet spot. That's the number that AP is going to want Luke Getsy to try to hit, and I don't think people truly understand how talented and how deep this Raiders defense is. Quite frankly, I don't think Sam Darnold's going to find the end zone. I don't think J.J. McCarthy is going to find the end zone. The only way the Vikings are scoring a touchdown against this Raiders defense is in the third or fourth quarter when some of those other backups are in the game. So one last thing before I get out of here. We're going to Minnesota. Not Chugs and I, but like the Raiders are traveling to the Vikings. They're going to be the road team. And if you're a Raiders fan and you're going to that game, my question is, are you going to stand up and cheer for the Raiders? Obviously that you're going to do that. I'm doing this show long enough. Y'all are loud and y'all are crazy, which is why I love you. But I want you to go to the video, their video by the Vikings channel, because they're doing an inside look and telling you all the ways that the Vikings are going to be able to beat the Raiders. So what I want you to do is be loud and proud. I always say this, I'll take 300 Raider fans up against 1,000 fans any day. Go to their video, spam Raiders, and I want to see if we can get more Raiders comments on their video than just overall Vikings comments. So please drown them out. I'm going to put his link to his video down in the comments, down in the description of today's show. Nation, don't let me down.